Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, March the 20th, 2019. It is 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 8 p.m. in London and Sydney, Australia. You should be somewhere around 11 p.m. at night, I think. Maybe I got that calculation wrong. Whatever time it is there, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy, and anywhere around the world, wherever you are listening. We appreciate you as well. This is an interesting continuation of the education of Walt regarding Mercury retrograde, which I've never really believed in. And now I'm beginning to wonder, maybe I should reconsider that. And Cindie, I can't make up my mind. Is it Mercury retrograde or is it my belief in Mercury retrograde that is causing this crazy stuff? Because, technology for me has been going bonkers for over a week now. So something's going on, but I'm wondering, am I just attracted? Is it, what the heck? What do you think?
Well, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it's not Mercury retrograde, it's just because you have that belief. But I do see an increase in not just technology, but communication things in general. And we use technology to communicate.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, I definitely see that happen. And I've always, once I understood the idea that Mercury retrograde is really good for things that start with RE, like buys and X, and not reboot too much, but all of those kind of things where we kind of step back and look at what we've been doing instead of charging on something new, like new contracts or buying new electronics. It works a little better. So that's my idea of it. But see, right now, even as I'm seeing my screen say no one else is sharing video, so I don't see you anymore. So.
Yeah, it looks like my video froze up. So let me see if I can fix that while we're talking here. This is just, this is amazing.
We can blame it on Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, but I don't like the feeling of blame. I want to be higher on the emotional guidance scale than that. So
I do too. That's what I was just thinking. Is that we never liked the energy of blaming, but
right.
I think that Mercury will take responsibility. Let's do it that way. And
okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it with Mercury, and then we'll just get on with our lives. Because I think if we take our attention off of it, it'll stop. It'll settle down. But
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we're getting comments, people greeting us and so forth. Hey. Jeffrey made a joke. Jeffrey made it funny. Don't call me Shirley. Okay, thank you. Asha says that was a good one. What about collective beliefs, Jeffrey asks. That's another good question. That's one that we haven't talked about in quite some time. But what do you think the role of collective beliefs is where LOA is concerned?
I think it's huge. It's huge. And I think it's also sometimes we don't have, I always have control, if I want to have it, over my own experience, right? Which is the way I respond and the way I react. But right. I don't have control over other people's behavior. I don't have control over natural occurrences that are happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of times that collective belief system is definitely creating things that would maybe be a lot easier to change if we could change our belief collectively. Mm-hmm. But one of us has a hard time changing with just our own belief. We can only change our own response to it, right? So, yeah, true. I think that's a huge thing. I bring that, I think I've brought that up several times that, when people start talking about, on our show, talking about world event, politics or whatever, we always have to remember that there are a lot of people who believe something different than we, who have opinions to differ from our own, who want to see something different than what we want to see. And when you have billions of people on the planet, that's a lot of energy. That's a lot of momentum. And it might be momentum that's going in a different way than what you wanted
yeah, right.
to go in, right? So, yeah, I think it has a huge, big effect.
This is just wild. Now your image is periodically freezing. So, we definitely we got to change the subject here. That's all there is to it. We got to start focusing on good things happening instead of all this technology stuff. Trying to change the language already. So I guess I'm focusing on, I am. I'm focusing on everything just being smooth from here on. So it's just a nice, easy conversation. Because after all, it's Neville Day. We get to talk about Neville Goddard. Neville Day. And we haven't been able to do that in a couple weeks.
I got some nice messages that people were missing me and missing Neville, and that made me feel good.
Absolutely, yeah.
That was very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to be back.
I'm happy to have you back. I'm happy to be doing Neville again because, I mean, there was a time there where we were doing it 2 or 3 times a week, and then we're down to once a week, and now it's been 2 weeks, and it's like I'm in withdrawal. I mean, so
right?
No, I'm glad to have you back.
This week's chapter is really interesting. So I'm happy to be where we are in the book as well. Are there any announcements or anything you want to make before we dive in?
No announcements. Nasha actually had a follow-up question to what we were talking about regarding group beliefs, group energy. She says, can we collectively manifest something wonderful? Would that be easier than one person trying to do it solo?
Absolutely. And we've done that on this podcast before.
We have, yeah.
Right? So yeah, we certainly can. And that's one of the benefits of doing things like this, and also finding people who hold your same beliefs, the power there. Finding people who also support you in whatever it is that you want to be creating.
Right.
If you notice, sometimes you'll read like books, success books. Not even necessarily flat out, law of attraction kind of stuff, but just books that are talking about success, business success, going after your dreams, personal growth kind of books. A lot of them will say, to be selective about who you share your big dreams with. Mm-hmm. Right? Because we all know if you've shared a big dream with somebody that maybe didn't have our best in at heart, but they were like, I don't want to do that because they couldn't see that for us. And so they may try to, just in some way. I don't even think they're trying to be a discouraging person, but they have trouble encouraging us because they think maybe we're going to run off and do something that's not going to work out. And they don't want to see us they don't want to see us disappointed. So they say, well, why don't you just do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you do this or that? And so that are in the success will say, share your with people who can hold that vision for people that say, yes, I know you can do it, Mm-hmm. And so I think that all goes back to what Nasha's talking about collective belief.
Yeah. By the way,
group of people.
Yeah. I would point out that Nasha was the one who brought that experiment to us because she's the one who brought it to our attention that Dee Dee was having trouble and needed help. She was in the hospital. And that's when we did our group healing thing. Yeah. So Nasha, you can just think back to that and remember that's where your proof is that it actually does work.
Yeah, it works. It does work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a big group either. Of course, there's more power, I think, the more people that are believing. But, that's why a lot of times that's why people hire coaches.
Yeah.
To hold the vision for them, to support them, to cheerlead them on and say, yes, you can do this. I know you can.
Right.
I think it's important to have our life and to be selective about, who we're sharing things with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think, we also learn pretty quickly how important it is to be careful because when we're not careful, then all of a sudden our dreams turn into nightmares and we realize, wait a minute, I did something wrong here. What did I do? And hopefully we make the connection and make the change in the people who are in our orbit, let's put it that way, so that we don't have the same experience. So.
Right. And I get that. And I hear that sometimes sometimes people don't want to tell their parents about certain things that they're going after. And a lot of times that's just because their parents love them and have had some of their own ideas about what success would look like for them. Yeah, right. And so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, you ready to dive into this
Neville
chapter?
Yeah, let's do it.
We have been making our way through the Neville Goddard book called Your Faith is Your Fortune. And this chapter, we're on chapter 13, is called the I'm-pressions. So it's like the word impressions, but there's an apostrophe between the I and the M, and there's a dash before the rest of the word. It's like hyphenated. So I love that he did this. So I'll never look at the word impression the same way again.
Yeah. When you see it in print, it's very...
Neville's always talking about, he's always talking about I am statements, right? So, and how that impresses on our consciousness. So I'm precious. I think it's funny.
It is.
All right. So he starts off with a verse from the Christian Bible. It says, "And as we have borne the image of the earthly, we shall all bear the image of the heavenly." And he goes on to say, your consciousness, or your I am, is the unlimited potential upon which impressions are made. Impressions are defined states based upon your I am. So this is interesting right here, is we've often talked about I am statements, like your story that you tell about yourself. But he's actually saying that he's equating here. This is another equation he makes, that I am is your consciousness. And he says your consciousness, or your I am. And I don't know that we've heard him actually use that kind of language before.
No, I mean, he's certainly equated consciousness to God, to Jesus, to the kingdom of heaven. But now he's tying I am into that and basically saying they are all the same thing. This is the first time I think we've completed that circuit, so to speak.
I think so too.
Yeah.
He says your consciousness, or your I am, can be likened to a sensitive film. In the virgin state, it is potentially unlimited. You can impress or record a message of love or a hymn of hate, a wonderful symphony or discordant jazz. It does not matter what the nature of the impression might be. Your I am will, without a murmur, willingly receive and sustain all impressions. And I think the reason why this is so important for us to grab is that a lot of us have experienced in the past, hopefully in the past, but a lot of negative self-talk. A lot of that negative mental chatter that can turn into our story. I'm not good at this. I'm not good. So I've actually asked as a coaching question before someone, we talk about your I am statements all the time, but what about your I am not statements? Right? Because we make those too. And Neville is saying here that it's like a sensitive film. If you think about the old film cameras, sometimes if you had a light leak in the body of your camera and some light got in there, the film would be ruined.
Right, exactly. Just
by this tiniest bit of light getting in. It was very, very sensitive. And Neville is saying that's how sensitive our consciousness is. So these stories that we tell about ourselves, if they are not what we want, we're still impressing them on our consciousness. He says your consciousness is the one referred to in Isaiah 53:3-7. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. He was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We've turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Your unconditioned consciousness is impersonal. It is no respecter of persons. Now, this is interesting because these verses that are actually from the Jewish scripts, prophets, they are often said to be fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And it's not my belief, but Neville is saying something completely different. Neville is saying that all of these verses are about your consciousness.
Right.
That's a pretty major statement.
Major? It's depressingly honest is what it really is. considering how often we despise ourselves and wound ourselves and turn ourselves away and oppress ourselves and afflict ourselves and open our mouths to step on ourselves. It's quite frustrating, actually, how often we do that.
Right? Right. One time I was coaching someone one time, and they said in the paragraph, they were speaking and said, because I'm just so stupid, and they just kept talking, and I stopped them and repeated it. They didn't even realize they'd said it.
Yeah.
And, right? And so I said, because you're so stupid? Did you hear yourself? I'm so stupid. And then they started, wow, but that just came out. It just came out so easy. Yeah. And so when we think about our consciousness creating, remember that that's what Neville has been telling us for the past dozen chapters, is that our consciousness creates everything we see going on around us. So if we're impressing our consciousness with stuff like that, ooh, okay, yeah. We need to change that, right?
Well, now we know why it is that we have days where people say, so how's your day? And you say, oh, well, because we've been beating ourselves up all day without realizing it in many cases.
Yeah, I think so. So now, without thought or effort, he's speaking our consciousness, it automatically expresses every impression that registered upon it. It does not object to any impression that is placed upon it, for although it is capable of receiving and expressing any and all defined states, it remains forever an immaculate and unlimited potential. Your I am is the foundation upon which the defined state or conception of yourself rests, but it is not defined by, nor is it dependent on, such defined states for its being. Your I am neither expands nor contracts. Nothing alters or adds to it. Before any defined state was, it is. When all states cease to be, it is. All defined states or conceptions of yourself are but ephemeral expressions of your eternal being. So, you know what comes up for me when I read this about, it's not dependent on, it's not defined by, but also that it doesn't judge. Like our consciousness doesn't say, oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that you're stupid. That's a bad idea. It just says, okay, all right, I'll create whatever needs to be created to
and simultaneously, when we programmed it to say, I'm so stupid, the consciousness didn't say, well, yes, I agree, you're so stupid. It just repeated it. It just said, yeah, that's the program. Okay, I'm running with the program.
It just said, exactly. It just said, I'll just create whatever I need to create to make that statement true.
Exactly. Yeah. Ugh. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Well, this is what we run into every day with every podcast. Every single podcast, we're talking about all the different ways. We don't actually label it this way, but we're talking about all of the different ways that we shoot ourselves in the foot every single day. And
that's the amazing part to me, though, is that if we say, if I go around and tell a story, and I use this example, you've heard it before, oh, I'm so terrible at remembering names. If I just keep telling that story, my consciousness, my subconscious will say, okay, and help me.
Yeah.
Right? It will support that story. It'll help me not remember names. And that story will be true. The good news, what that means is that we can tell other stories that for things that we want to create. And our subconscious isn't going to judge those either.
Yeah, true.
Right?
That's a good thing.
It's going to just say, all right, okay.
Yes. It's reassuring because that means we can reprogram ourselves. That means we aren't stuck in this as a forever loop. We actually can change it. That's what that really means.
Right. And that's what we were just talking about when Neville says, nothing all adds to it. Right? All states cease to be. It is. Before any defined state was, it is. So it's not dependent on those states that we're teaching to it. It's just there to really to be the servant to whatever we are willing.
Right.
So Neville says to be impressed is to be I'm pressed. I am pressed. First person, present tense.
It actually says
all
that.
expressions. All expressions are the result of I'm pressions. Only as you claim yourself to be that which you desire to be, will you express such desires. Let all desires become impressions of qualities that are, not qualities that will be. I am, your awareness is God, and God is the fullness of all, the eternal now, I am. That's interesting as well, because a lot of times, especially when we're dealing with conscious creation and law of attraction, it's easier for us maybe to say I will be.
Oh, sure.
Instead of I am.
Mm-hmm.
And yet by doing that, we're still pushing it off into the future, we're not stepping into it right now.
Right. And he's actually, he's taking what we talked about a moment ago, about all the focus on all the ways that we're stupid, broken, dumb, all that kind of thing, and saying, okay, now that we know what not to do, here's what we do instead. Here's how we change it around. That's what he's really saying here. To be impressed is to be I'm pressed. All expressions are the result of I'm impressions. So change our I'ms.
It might be easier said than done because we make habit, right? We create those habits, but it's something that's worth practicing. He says, take no thought of tomorrow. Tomorrow's expressions are determined by today's impressions. Now is the accepted time. The kingdom of heaven at hand. Jesus and his salvation said, I'm with you always. Your awareness is the Savior is with you always. But if you deny you also, you deny him by claiming will appear, as millions today are claiming that salvation is to come. This is the equivalent of saying we are not saved. You must stop looking for your Savior to appear and begin claiming that you are already saved, and the signs of your claims will follow. So I want to interject that change that word, to whatever. Already saved, already abundant, already healthy, already in love, already, successful. Instead of I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be, just bring it into the present moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the use of the word saved ties back to salvation, which is certainly a Christian concept, but the way he's using it here is dramatically different from the way it's used within the Christian church, because he's not talking about being saved by someone else, by an intermediary, an intercession or something like that. He's talking about us just changing the way we're focusing and thinking because we're in control.
Right, and he's also not talking about the afterlife. He's talking about the life we're experiencing right now.
Right now, yes.
He's
correct.
not talking something in the future. He's not talking about something nebulous and spiritual and ephemeral that we can't see, although it could be, if that was what your goal is.
Sure, yeah.
Is to be spiritually healthy. But he's talking about whatever desires you have right now.
Yep.
And the saving part, the salvation, is that we get saved from our worst impulses. We get saved from the possibility of not having success, or not having abundance, or not having health, or not having peace, or what we are looking for. He says when the widow was asked what she had in her house, there was recognition of substance. Her claim was a few drops from a gusher, if properly claimed. Your awareness magnifies all consciousness. To claim that I have oil, he says joy, is to confess that I have empty measures. Some expressions of lack produce lack. Okay, let me go back and reread that correctly. To claim that I shall have oil is to confess that I have empty. So this is the same thing we've been talking about. When we say, well, someday I'm going to have, and here's how this shows up so often in the language that we use today. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I have a relationship. I'll be happy when a little more money's coming in. I'll be happy when I just lose this last 10 pounds I've been trying to lose. I'll be happy when I have a bigger house. I'll be I could go on for days because I hear these things all the time, and I've probably said some of them myself, right?
Oh, sure, me too.
But the happiness has to come now. It has to be first, not after. Because all the good things that we want to attract, they are a result of us feeling good. They are not the result. They don't produce the result of us feeling good.
And
they are the result of us feeling good.
I can actually point to what I was doing before the podcast. Before the podcast, I was taking my daily walk. And the weather was, for around here, beautiful. For around there, it was on the cold side. But here, it's in the mid-50s. And it's beautiful for a walk. So I was out my walk, and throughout my entire walk, with only one exception. Now, this is about an hour-long walk. For about 5 minutes, there was an exception. But the other 55 minutes, I was really hitting it. I was on all kinds of things. There were certain subjects I was looking at, but a variety of things that were all good feeling stuff. And that was like first of all, it felt great. It was also like a momentous occasion to note that, wow, I've gotten to the point now, I've practiced so hard for so long to stay in the focus of the positivity, and now I'm getting there. And now I'm there, actually. I'm actually there, 55 minutes out of 60. That 10 years ago, that would have been impossible to me. Now it's awesome. It's part of my life, So literally what he's saying here, I'm proving to be true. I'm proving that I can focus on what I want to be. I am in control. I do get to decide. That I am is all powerful. And I've just been learning how to control the steering wheel, really.
It's amazing. And it's amazing that the practice that is consistent produces such great results.
It does.
And sometimes the only way we actually see them is to look back, right, and realize, wow. And I think it's important that we do that, to stand back and realize how far we've come.
Right? Yeah, it's very important. I agree. So let's see, where are we on this?
So impressions of lack produce lack.
Right.
And when we say, I want something, and we say it enough that we're going to have it in the future, I really want this, we're saying I don't have it. And not to say that we shouldn't desire things, but it's just that focusing on that side of the coin. Because everything has two sides. The thing and the lack of the thing.
Yeah, it's a reminder to change our focus. Okay, well, previously I was focusing on I will have it in the future. Well, now I'm going to change it around and say, you know what? I have it in the present. I'm just going to imagine it. I'm going to pretend that it is. And as I'm pretending, it becomes more and more true.
Everything contains its opposite. So most of us, we might not have as much as we want of whatever it is, but we have some measure of it.
Yes.
Right? Like maybe we want to be in better shape. Maybe we want to be healthier. Mm-hmm. But we do have some measure of health.
Oh, yeah. We have a large measure of health.
Otherwise, we'd be dead, right?
Yeah, right.
We do want, sometimes we want more money, but we do have some money. So focusing on being grateful for what we do have is a better option than focusing on the lack, is what Neville's saying here.
Mm-hmm. And also kind of stretching our minds a little bit. Okay, so maybe I don't have as much money as I want, but that doesn't mean I can't pretend that I do. Sure, I can pretend it. Mm-hmm. And in that pretending, it actually becomes true in my mind first, and then later in my experience. But the most important thing, this is one thing I was really focusing on during my walk today. It almost doesn't matter whether or not it manifests into something physical. Because what really matters is how's it feeling right now.
Right. I love that. I love hearing that because that's something I feel like trying to drill into people's heads, and I don't know if I communicate it well. But the whole idea of meditating or imagined states, like Neville talks about, we call them a vignette often.
Right.
Just using our imagination to experience something. It's like we can do that just for the enjoyment of imagining it in the moment. And when we do that, we are tapping into the pure feeling of it, the pure, the pure essence of that thing, instead of tainting that essence with the recognition that we don't have it yet. which is, I think, what happens a lot when people try to visualize something or meditate upon something, and there's still this other part of the story running but I don't really have it. I actually had somebody tell me one time, well, I don't want to feel good by just imagining it. I want to have it. Yeah. And they said, and I'm not going to be happy until I have it. I'm not going to just pretend and feel good about that. That's just all imagination. I was like, okay. Well, what can you say?
Your wish is my command.
Right? So Neville says, God, your awareness, is no respecter of persons. Purely impersonal, God, this awareness of all existence, receives impressions, qualities, and attributes defining consciousness, namely your impressions. Your every desire should be determined by need. Needs, whether seeming or real, will automatically be fulfilled when they are welcomed with sufficient intensity of purpose as defined desires. Now that's an interesting statement. I want to kind of rewrite it in a language.
That sounds good.
Okay. So what he's saying in the beginning here is that our consciousness, and we already recognized this before, that our consciousness is impersonal, the awareness of everything, the impression that it's receiving. It doesn't favor, one person over another, or one person's ideas or imaginations over another. It just receives those impressions and attributes and then produces whatever it needs to produce. So Neville goes on to say, your every desire is determined by need, whether seeming real. And so I think this is interesting because of the idea of neediness. But Neville's definitely getting at something else here, because I think that in our modern world today, the way we might read this is that we shouldn't have what we want, we should have need. And that's not what Neville's saying. Right?
I agree.
In other words, some people say, well, I don't really need that. Yeah. And so they feel guilty wanting something unless it's an actual need. And needs are subjective. I mean, we all basic human needs. We need air to breathe and food to eat, water to drink, sleep, whatever, a roof over our head, some kind of shelter. But Neville goes on to say, whether seeming or real, will automatically be fulfilled when they're welcomed with sufficient intensity of purpose as defined desires. So I think he's really speaking here to getting specific with his word, using the word defined and having some kind of intensity of purpose. What I see here is the idea of knowing why you want something and knowing what it is that's important. Sometimes people say they want something, or they'll say, oh, I wish I had that, right? So they see a pretty car drive by and say, ooh, I wish I had a car like that. And then they never think about it again. That's probably not going to get fulfilled.
Probably not.
Right? Because there isn't sufficient intensity of purpose behind it.
Right.
But when we really know what we want, feel like I really need this thing and I desire it. My desire is strong and I know what it is. And there's an intensity of purpose behind it. That's when we start seeing the manifestation. Does that make sense?
I think you're right. I think the key words are intensity of purpose. And we will tend to get tripped up on words like needs. In fact, needs, wants, there are whole debates to be had about, well, it should be that you have a need or should you have a want, or, is one worse than the other? You can get into all kinds of craziness about that. But the real point is intensity of purpose. And that comes from just how long you're going to focus on it and how consistently you're going to focus on it and how excited are you going to get about it. So it almost doesn't matter whether you define it as a need or a want or a widget. It doesn't make any difference. The question is, right, and what's your focus?
And I think knowing why we want it was sort of like, now I'm going all the way back to like beyond a year ago. And it's my simple experience with starting to feel like I was getting a cold.
Right, back in January 2018. Yeah.
Right. And we were going through one of the Abraham books at the time and learning about pivoting. And that's what we were teaching on the podcast, about pivoting.
Right.
And about how turning the focus from, because my focus would so easily be at that time to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to do the podcast and say, oh my gosh, I can't breathe through my nose. My throat is scratchy. I don't feel good. Do I have a fever? I think I might have a fever. And, I would just start going down that road.
Absolutely.
And I would pivot to, wait a minute. I need to focus on what I want. I want to be healthy. Well, I want to feel good. And then ask myself why. And the first why was always the wrong one. It was always because I don't want to be sick. And I would say, no, that's not good enough. Why do I want to feel well? Because I wake up full of energy. I'm raring to go. I want to show up in good voice and with a clear mind, and I want to be able to sharply, and I want to be able to deliver quality, information to people. I want to be happy and be in a good energy. And okay, once I started doing that, the symptoms would just go.
It's amazing,
just
isn't it?
Be gone.
Yeah.
And so what was the deal? How am I relating it to this? Is it was determined by need. I really needed to be well. Why? It wasn't because I don't want to be sick. It was because I needed to have these other feelings. It felt like a need. And there was sufficient intensity of purpose as defined desire. I defined it. What does it mean? It means I feel happy, full of energy. My body feels good. I'm raring to go. I jump out of bed. I'm thinking clearly. I can breathe through my nose like you're supposed to be able to. And all of those things, they completely changed the experience. Knowing all those things, naming those things, defining those things. I think that's what Neville's talking about here.
I think you're right. I think that he is really driving at the fact that when we get ourselves into that little trap, and you were describing that trap in really elaborate terms very nicely, but when we get ourselves into that trap of focusing on what we don't want, it can take a little while to turn it around. But he's saying, really all you have to do is just have that intensity of purpose, and you can get there. It doesn't matter so much that you tripped. What matters is you recognized what direction you want to go in, and then you applied your intensity to it. You were talking about it in terms, I forget what your example was, but it made me think of my example you were talking about in terms of getting sick. My example was also from last year about having my knee injuries, where my ligaments were injured. And I had to really apply this concept of intensity in a big way because I couldn't always get into that good feeling place. But I knew that intensity trumps the perfection of how high your feeling is. So if you're in a moderate feeling place and you're really, really intense about it, it still breaks through anyway. So that's what I was doing. And it was pretty amazing how it worked. It was pretty amazing how quickly the results were. I mean, I can't say that my knees felt instantly better as soon as I got back on my feet. Well, no, I can say that actually. I can't say that they felt well. I can't say that my knees felt great when I stood up. But I can say that after that session and I stood up, I did so with a lot less pain. I did so with a lot less effort and a lot more ease than I had before. And that's how I knew, wow, this stuff really does work. This mind over matter stuff is incredible. So it does take some effort. It takes some perseverance, that intensity of purpose, as he calls it. But boy, is that powerful. Really powerful.
Well, and he says that those things will automatically be fulfilled.
Yeah, and they are.
And what's interesting is that where he says needs, whether seeming or real, will automatically be fulfilled when they are welcomed.
Yes.
We often don't welcome a need. Oh no, right? Where it's like, oh, I have this need, and we resist it. But he's showing us something completely different here. It's very wonderful, actually. All right. So he says, knowing that your awareness is God. Now, I love this sentence very much. Knowing that your awareness is God, you should look upon each desire as the spoken word of God, telling you that which is. We
have a number of different definitions of God going on here. God is consciousness. We are God.
Yes.
Awareness is God. The spoken word is God. I mean, they're all equivalent.
But look at this. Knowing that your awareness is God, you should look upon each desire as the spoken word of God telling you that which is. So instead of being upset when we suddenly have a need or a desire, instead of looking at it as I'm wanting this thing and that desire is not fulfilled, I don't have it, we should look upon it as the spoken word of God telling us that which is. So when we have a desire, if we look at it that way, we would welcome it. It would be much easier to welcome a desire.
So the
knowing
point
that really it was just God telling me what was.
It's a little bit of a mind game because it's also true that we are God. So it's us talking to ourselves, telling ourselves that this is what our desire is, and in so doing, that desire becomes the root to what we want, and it also becomes an expression of what's true. This is what I really desire. Of what's true. Yeah.
Right. Of what's true. And the word that he used in the sentence previous, that it would automatically unfold, right? Automatically manifest.
Yeah.
He quotes Isaiah here. He says, "Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of?" That kind of reminds me of, being careful and selective about who we listen to. He says, "Wherever that which is defined by our awareness, never claim I shall be that. Let all claims from now on be, I am that I am. Before we ask, we are answered. The solution of any problem associated with desire is obvious. Every problem automatically produces the desire of solution." That's funny. One of my very first philosophy teachers taught me the idea that the solution are the same thing. And I've found that to be true. And that's what Neville is saying right here. Every problem automatically produces the desire of solution. Mm-hmm. Man is schooled in the belief that his desires are things against which he must struggle. In his ignorance, he denies his Savior, who is constantly knocking at the door of consciousness, to be let in. I am the door. Would not your desire, if realized, save you from your problem? To let your Savior in is the easiest thing in the world. This must be to be let in. You are conscious of a desire. The desire is something you are aware of now. Your desire, though invisible, must be affirmed by you to be something that is real. God calleth those things which be not, are not seen, as though they were. Claiming I am the thing desired, I let the Savior in. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man heareth my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him and he with me. Every desire is the Savior's knock at the door. This knock every man hears. Man opens the door when he claims, I am he. See to it now that you let your Savior in. Let the thing desired press itself upon you until you are impressed with nowness of your Savior. Then you utter the cry of victory. It is finished.
Yeah. He's a little bit wordy about the way he says these things, but I guess he does it that way because he is.
Well, I think most of his wordiness comes from him consistently using Christian verses to bear out what he's trying to say.
Well, this is true. Yeah. I mean, we can't really deny that. No doubt about that. I think a lot of it, though, is I wonder how much of this is him trying to figure out for himself, how do I express what I learned most within the Christian context?
Oh, I think a lot of it is that. I think it was him speaking to an audience in their vernacular, in the way they wanted to hear it. I'm curious what stands out from this chapter for people that are listening, and if we have any comments or questions.
Well, Jeffrey did raise a question. He says, can you talk more about intensity of purpose and how to add momentum? Because that's really what the purpose of intensity is, to add momentum. So it's almost redundant, the question, but it's a good question. You want to address it first, or do you want me to?
Well, what comes up in my mind is that what I said before, I really think that's important, is knowing why we want something. I think that we can amp up our intensity of purpose, I mean, it's kind of redundant. The purposes are, that's why we want it. That's the purpose that we give to wanting this thing. And so if we can intensify it by knowing all the reasons why, and I think that's the way we do it, is that we start making a list. I mean, we don't have to write it down necessarily, although that doesn't hurt, but start quizzing ourselves on why we want this thing. Why do I want this? Whatever it is. Why? And the more reasons that we can add to that list, it's like we're building a case.
Yes.
And we're creating the evidence that we need, right, to intensify that purpose. I think that's how we do it, is dig deep and figure it out. We focus on that. Right there is going to build your focus.
Well, focus is the other piece of it. It's the big piece, because literally, especially if you're dealing with pain, I've noticed this to be particularly true. You want to build up the intensity, yes, but you also want that intensity to be focused like a laser beam going through a very, very fine lens, so that it's just one particular point that you're trying to hit in space, so to speak. Because when you focus with that degree of intensity, that's when you get the big results. So how do you build up that intensity of purpose? Well, you do it by continuing to just do it. You just keep building it. In fact, I was during the walk that I had today, and I was focusing on I had one particular thing I was really, really focusing on that I'm trying to manifest. And I was getting very good feeling about it. And it was interesting because I knew that it wasn't feeling more intense. I wasn't experiencing the intenseness, so I had to kind of remind myself. I have been continuing to focus on this. I had like a half hour straight where I was doing a really good job just only staying on that one thing. So even though the intensity didn't feel bigger in me, just the fact that I was focusing on that same thing for a half an hour meant it was getting more and more intense, more and more momentum built up in the vortex. So I may not have seen it yet. I may not have felt all of that intensity yet. I was feeling good. Don't get me wrong. I was definitely feeling good, but it doesn't matter so much that I didn't feel the intensity yet. I was still building it anyway, just by having that continued attention to it. And that's what I found. That's what I found when I was working on my injury too, with my knee injury. It wasn't so much efforting the focus. It was just being determined about the focus and saying, I'm only going to focus on that healthy knee. That's all I'm going to focus on. I'm not allowing that pain knee to be in my mind's eye at all. And yeah, there was a little bit of a wrestling match going on there, but the wrestling match was more about staying on track, staying on that path, no matter what. No matter what, I'm just staying on that one track. If I can just stay on that one track, then I'm okay. And that's what happened. I did stay on that one track, and I was okay.
So, I had a question about, and wonder if your experience was similar to mine with the cold come on. So when you were having the pain and you were focusing on, releasing the pain, having relief of the pain, you just used the term wrestling match, which makes me think that you would find relief, but then the pain would start to come back and you would have to focus again and go back to, is that the case?
Yes. Because what was actually happening was the pain was constantly pulling my attention over. That was the wrestling match, trying to keep my attention where I wanted it. And for those moments where I could just keep it exactly where I wanted to, for those moments the pain did go away. And I'd be astonished about it. I'd lose my focus and the pain would come back. Like, oh, geez, I forgot to hold the focus. Go back to holding the focus again. And then for another split second, the pain would go away. Like, yes, I'm doing it again. Oh, I just lost it again. Try one more time and just keep going after it like that.
And did you notice that the longer that you were in the wrestling match, that the times of focusing got easier?
Yes.
Or that you were able to hold the focus longer?
Absolutely, yes. The first time I got focus, I got it for about 1/10 of a second. The second time was for about a quarter second, then a half a second, then a full second. I think I got up to about 5 seconds, and then I got exhausted. But I did keep building it up, yes.
Right, so to Jeffrey's question, that's momentum right there.
It is. Yeah, absolutely it is.
And that is building that intensity. Because I noticed the same thing with the issue of me having the head cold, is that I always did the same exact thing. I went down it was the same, steps. It was the same process. or the same experience
right.
of starting to go down that road of, oh my gosh, I feel so terrible, and counting the symptoms, to realizing, making the pivot, and then deciding, no, these are the reasons why I want to feel good.
Right.
And at first, I could only think of a couple of reasons. But then every time I pivoted back, I was building that list. And a month later, when I started trying to, or a cold was trying to come live with me again, it was much easier that time.
Right.
The wrestling match was not nearly, it wasn't equal anymore. I wasn't with an equal, right? It was easily put down because suddenly I had gotten practice and I had that momentum. So I think that's it. It's being willing to keep going, and it's being willing to not give up when you're in that wrestling match, but to keep going, to keep turning your focus, to keep pivoting. I think that's the answer there.
I agree 100%. That is not only the key to building the momentum, it's the key to changing the thought pattern. Especially if we have a negative thought pattern of some kind, that's it. That's how you do it. You just insist, I'm just not going to go there. Oh, I did it again? Well, then I'm just not going to go there. I'm going to go over here. And you get snap back, no, I'm going over here. No, I'm going over here. I'm going over here. You just get insistent about it.
How many of those thought patterns are habitual?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to break that habit.
Yeah.
And create new neural connections in the brain that start firing in a different way than what's already happening. And I think it just takes practice and focus and consistency, and we just have to keep going, keep going.
And using the word in the way that Neville means it, thank God that we can make that change to the point that it gets easier. In other words, thank ourselves, thank our focus, thank our intensity, thank our purpose. That yes, we really can make that change.
Right? And it's great. It's great now, like looking back and remembering these things, because then when we come up against something, it's so much easier. Oh, I've done this before.
Yeah.
I know.
And it's not like it always gets easy after that, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. I mean, I'm sure you get a lot of people who come to you with relationship issues, and probably some of them are really good at with money. They have no trouble attracting the money, but the relationships are tripping them up.
Right.
Right. Whereas
and
there might
vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. There are a number of people who are health coaches, and they'll get people who are immensely successful in every area of their life, but they're sick all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Part of that is, we often have a hard time believing we can have it all.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
And that we have to, it's like I told you before, I have somebody in my life that used to say all the time, oh, you have to take the good with the bad.
Yes.
There's sort of always expecting, there's a balance or a payoff. Well, everything's really good over here, so I guess I'm going to, pay my dues somehow, that kind of thinking. And it's true a lot of times. I remember talking to two different people in the same week, and the one person said to me, well, relationships are hard, and said, making money is easy. And the other person said, oh, I'm so happy that I'm in such a wonderful relationship, and we're so happy, making money so hard. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because they just, two different people had completely opposite stories.
That's right. Yeah. And it's common.
And their stories, their experience bore their stories out.
Yeah, sure.
Their stories were absolutely true in their experience because that's what they were experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an ongoing practice. I think that's what the point is. It's an ongoing practice of learning to apply the principle, to apply the skill, really, of intently purposing, intently focusing, and just doing it in every area of our lives. I mean, that if I had to summarize people talk about a life mission. If I had to summarize my life mission, that's my life mission. To learn to apply my focus in every area of my life on demand as soon as I want to. Every single time the way I want to, instead of letting the programs take over. And the more that I stick to that, the better I get at it, which is, it's good. It's reinforcing. That's why I said earlier,
Right.
it almost doesn't matter if stuff's manifesting or not, because otherwise you can get, kind of caught up on, well, stuff hasn't shown up yet. When what I really need to be caught up on is I'm making progress. Now, this is progress I can measure. This is progress I can see in myself every single day. So the more that I can focus on, that's where my progress is, I know the better off that I am. And eventually the results will show up.
And when you focus there's less resistance.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah. Like you said, when you start focusing on the thing hasn't shown up yet, that's a lot of resistance.
Tons of resistance. Oh, yes. Stay away from, it hasn't shown up yet. Stay away from that. Keep going with the exercise. Yeah. Keep going with that intensity. Going. Keep going. Just keep going. Keep on keeping on. Isn't that what we used to say back in the day? Keep on keeping on.
Exactly.
We've got just a few minutes left. I want to make sure I get our commercial messages in. So if you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, please become one. We're making it as easy as we can. I don't know if I told you, Cindie, but on the homepage of our website at loatoday.net, if somebody goes to the homepage, instead of having to pick the right icon for their device, it now detects what kind of device they have and shows them just the one that they need. So if you're on an iPhone, it shows you the button for an iPhone. If you're on an Android, it shows you the button for an Android and so forth. So you just click that and you walk through the steps that it walks you through, and it just signs you right up, which is how you get all the episodes coming to your smartphone. And then, of course, once you're listening, make sure that you're sharing the fact that you're listening with other people through social media so that they can get their daily dose of happy. And if we just keep, using the multiplier effect there and more people get their daily dose of happy, then we get millions of people intently and purposefully focusing. And I just talk about group energy, talk about what happens when you have a group of people all focusing, what happens when it starts getting into the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions.
Right.
My mind boggles at it, but it's a kind of boggling I like.
Excellent.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yes, please do. Please subscribe and please tell people. Just, you really, all you have to do is tell people that you're listening.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
it doesn't have to be much.
When I see someone post on social media that they just watched a movie or they just listened to something or they ate at this great restaurant, that's all they need to say. Mm-hmm. It's like, I've been enjoying listening to LOA today. I'm like,
there it is.
I need to go check it out.
Gotta love it.
Thank you for doing that too.
And also, while we have some time, tell people how to reach Cindie Chavez too, because she's a pretty special person.
Oh, thank you. Well, they can reach me on my website, cindiechavez.com, CindieChavez.com, and there's a contact form there, and I love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your impressions of, the podcast, or, if you need something, or you want to hire me as a coach, I'm happy to do that too. But just, reach out and say hello. You don't even have to have a reason beyond saying hello.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. And I will give people a tease about next week's show. Next week is chapter 14 in the book, Your Faith is Your Fortune. The title is another one of those words where we've got to look at our Neville decoder ring. It's called circumcision.
This should be interesting.
This should be very, very interesting. I have to admit, there's going to be a little piece of me that's going to say, do you really want to do this show? But
well, we have a week to decide. We could just go to chapter 15.
Just skip it. No, I don't think we'll skip it. But I figured, when you get a title that is controversial, shall we say, you got to put it out there because you want to get more people to listen, right? So you can just tell everybody, come listen about circumcision next week.
I haven't looked at the chapter, so I'm over here like, oh, wow, thank you.
It should be interesting. Anyway, if nothing else, it'll make us laugh. That much we know for sure.
It will make us laugh. That's for sure. We like to laugh.
So let's see. Any last questions here? Nasha saying it's an awesome show. Jeffrey saying he appreciates everything. So yeah, people are doing a lot of appreciating. So good. That's good. And
appreciate all of.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate having you back after a week off. I mean, that's been great too. I want to remind everybody also that we have been experiencing some technical issues. We're trying to change our own thought process. I'm trying to change mine. So, if you find that when you show up for a live stream, or even if you hear something on the podcast that isn't quite right, just help us to focus on a successful, smooth podcast, because that's where the group energy can also help. So just, pass some positive energy our ways that we'll continue to have smooth and easy transmissions from now on, because I could use the help. And with that thought in mind, I will say thank you all for listening. Thank you to our regular podcast listeners as well. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.